It's kind of amazing. God, okay.
Hey, LA Progressive friends and family. I'm sitting here with Carol Wells, and she has spent, I think, her entire life working. Well, she's the founder, and she's been working with an organization that is the Center for the Study of Political Graphics. And they're about to celebrate their 35th anniversary. They're having some kind of anniversary celebration on June the 2nd. So Carol is joining us, and she's going to tell us all about CSPG, the Center for the Study of Political Graphics, and how people can visit and learn more about why you exist. So welcome, Carol.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Sharon, and thank you for the important work that you and Dick do.
Thank you so much. So tell me, you started this 35 years ago, and we ran into each other at a dinner for the
Death
death
penalty
penalty
focus.
focus.
Right.
And I was surprised to learn, your husband was seated right beside me, and I was surprised to learn that you had 90,000 images?
At least 90,000. We're the largest, the collection goes back to the 19th century, but that's only a handful, it's not a lot. But the bulk of the collection is 1960s to the present. And of post-World War II, we're the largest collection in the United States, possibly the world, but I don't want to, I mean, we're one of the three largest protest poster collections in the world. And it may be, but I'm more humble than to say that we're the largest in the world. So I'm comfortable saying we're the largest post-World War II collection in the United States.
Amazing. So I imagine that if someone were to take a look at this collection, even just, a 1% look from the beginning to the end, it tells a story. It tells a story about protests, successful, some not successful. Well, how would you speak to that?
Well, the posters, first of all, I wasn't interested in posters till I went to Nicaragua in 1981. So I literally had a conversion looking at how they were using posters to communicate with people and to get them to break through their bubble, because posters are like, it's a visual punch. If it's a good poster, it breaks through the image overload that we have all the time. And I literally had a very dramatic epiphany in 1981. I can date it, and that's when I started collecting posters around stopping the U.S. war in Central America. But the posters work are important for multiple reasons. The first reason is they get people's attention, intending to educate them, inspiring them to get involved in solving a problem, stopping a war, dealing with homelessness, wearing a mask during COVID. I mean, there's the range of posters topics is enormous. But once the issue is over, and it's never really over because we see all these things keep coming back or never go away. But once that specific, say a poster from the 60s, it's no longer the 60s. The 60s are, 60 years ago almost, or they are 60 years ago. They still have important use because they tell the story of struggle at the time. They tell the story of what was motivating people and what was inspiring people. But they also tell, and that's a necessary story to tell future generations. But they also tell the story, record our victories, which if you read in the newspapers don't tell them, the corporate press doesn't tell them, the most of the books you read in schools, unless it's a Howard Zinn or that genre, don't tell the stories. And the posters do tell stories of battles won and battles lost, but they mainly telling of the battles that were fought. And that is a victory in itself, that people were mobilizing for justice. So they really are important as a recording the legacy of the progressive movement.
Absolutely. If you would have, I think I was like you, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I had an appreciation for the importance of posters, I don't think that I would have. But I've learned through publishing the LA Progressive, and we've published over 45,000 articles, that it's not text alone that touches and teaches people. We need art. We need imagery. We need so many ways to reach the hearts and minds of people. And I think that posters are a wonderful way to do that. Now, you mentioned that 1981 in Nicaragua, you remember that date. Do you mind sharing the story? What happened that made you realize the importance of posters?
Well, had been a social activist since high school, started civil rights movement, Vietnam War protests, and I never ever totally stopped. And then went to graduate school in the 70s. I was an art historian, but I was studying the art of the rich and powerful. And during the day, I would protest the activities of the rich and powerful. But I wasn't interested in posters. They were below my radar. And I was doing Nicaragua solidarity work since 79. And I remember going to a fundraiser and at KPFK, and there was a table full of posters about the literacy crusade that was a fundraiser. And I made a donation, but I didn't take any posters because what am I going to do with these? It was literally 2 years earlier before my obsession with posters began. And I was hired by a UCLA professor, David Kunzel, who just died literally this year. And he had been a poster collector since the 60s, since the Vietnam War. And he had thousands of them. And he hired me to help him collect posters in Nicaragua. The revolution was brand new, 2 years old, and he wanted to document those posters. So I got paid enough money for my husband and I to go down and collect posters. And we would collect, it was fun. I mean, it was fun. We were meeting people like Ernesto Cardenal and Daisy Zamora. And we were just really having an amazing, it was more than fun, but it was also fun experience. And then one went to the Women's Association, and they gave me not just one or two posters, but they gave us a dozen because they were brand new for a demonstration that hadn't yet happened. So I didn't know what to do with a dozen at that time. So we kept a couple to bring back to LA, but then we were regifting them to people we were staying with and people who gave us stuff. And the woman we were staying with put it on her wall, and it was a big green poster, and it said in Spanish, it was in building the new country, we are becoming the new woman. Very pretty profound statement. But she was also like the local healthcare person. And one of her neighbors who was very anti-Sandinista, but was not adverse to getting free healthcare, kind of like Congress today, when does my free healthcare start, but don't give it to anybody else.
Right, yeah.
Came over to get her free healthcare and brought her 8 or 9 year old son with her. And it was the first time he'd ever been there. And you could almost imagine the conversations at dinner talking against the people whose house we were at, those Sandinista lovers, etc.
Wow.
And so I was alone with this child, and he wasn't interested in talking to me. I probably couldn't have talked to him anyway. And he was looking around and he's thinking, oh, they have a TV, we have a TV. I mean, you could just kind of imagine he was checking it out. And then he sees this poster on the wall. And it was big and it was bold and he walked over to it, and he was short and it was tall, high on the wall. And he had to get close, and I could see him mouthing the words, Construyendo la Patria Nueva, and watch him try to figure it out. Now, it's a very profound statement, right? Constructing a new country, we are becoming the new woman. 8 or 9 year old is probably not going to figure it out. The point that got me was it broke through what he was doing. Here he was going through his daily life, as we all do, taking in his surroundings. And this is the one that grabbed his attention by its bold color. And then it made him look at the words and try to figure the words out. So what is this about is a question that every time we ask a question, we're not the same person that we were before we asked the question, that there's something in this universe that we live in that we don't understand that is confronting us at that moment. And so if the posters do make you ask questions, why are they doing this? What does this mean? Why is it in my face? And that opens up a little space for dialogue, for questioning, for reevaluation, for looking at the world a little differently than we looked at the world before we saw that poster. So that was that moment of my epiphany It was because of this young child looking at a poster and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a great story. And I think it really it reminds me that the marketing industry, the PR industry, they've known this all along. I was thinking about, I'm born and raised in New York, and somewhere in Manhattan, there's always some kind of, at least in my upbringing, there was always some kind of construction. And then there would be signs that say post no bills, and then there would be posters all over. And I always wondered, why did they put these posters up? It would be the same poster over and over and over and over again, but it was usually to promote some form of entertainment. Either a movie was coming out, or maybe there was going to be a boxing match, that there was something happening at Madison Square Garden. But it generally was not something that centered on politics or social justice or human rights. So I think it's the work that you're doing is absolutely important. So can you talk a little bit about the 90,000 now that you've collected over these years? What kinds of issues are covered?
Well, the reason we have so many, first is we've gotten a lot of people to donate our posters
Mm.
to us. There are many other more established poster archives. Almost every university, has, and museums are now starting to collect them, because they're even though their prices are gone up when you buy them, they're a lot cheaper than buying a Picasso or a Matisse. So, and people like them better because they understand them more. They're much more accessible. You don't have to have a college degree to understand, like you have to understand abstract art. It's not something that immediately jumps through to you, but a poster, that meaning really does. Otherwise, it's not working as a poster. And so we have received a lot of posters from both the artists and the organizers and organizations from the movement. So that's one of the reasons we grew so fast and so big, is that we were getting the posters, and we still are getting the posters from the people who made them or used them or collected them because they were part of the movement. So that's clearly one of the, and the other thing is, most poster collections, when they exhibit them, they don't try to recreate the moment in time, what was going on where they were made. They treat them generally as interesting aesthetic objects. They collect them after the fight is over. Vietnam War posters are now collectibles because the war is over. But a poster about Gaza is not going to be so collectible right now, because it's in the news. They're being produced. They're being given away, and they're highly controversial at the moment still. Who knows what they'll be in 50 years from now, if any of us are still around to notice. But I'm sure they will still be controversial. And some posters stay that way for a long time.
So have you seen a change in the way that posters are distributed now that so much is digitalized, and we have this online world, virtual world, for the distribution of content and imagery?
That's a great question. One of the reasons that we have so many is that the distribution, say back in the 60s, was not always great. And there was a lot of posters left over from demonstrations that did not get distributed, maybe went into storage, or there was in some bookstore. I mean, even into the 80s, there were still piles of unused posters around. And the biggest difference is the internet allows free downloads of posters. So not only does it help with finances, because it was expensive to produce. I mean, if you were doing offset, it was a fairly large investment, because they only do large runs. And if you do, I mean, the most inexpensive were the handmade, the analog, the silk screen, lino cut, wood cut. They certainly weren't non-stencil. They're not expensive to produce, but they're extremely labor intensive. So that that's the opposite side of the offset. But with the digital downloads, you have artists put up posters, and then the individual who wants this poster or that poster can literally, they will pay or they have a big enough printer at home, they can download it themselves. So the distribution is much easier now because it's decentralized. One of my favorite examples is the truthdig.org, the Robert Shears online newsletter, which no longer exists in that format. They published during the Egyptian protests in Tahrir Square, they published a graphic produced by Mr. Fish, who's a political cartoonist, Dwayne, blanking on his last name. And it combined the Corda portrait photograph of Che Guevara, that very iconic, most reproduced photograph in the world probably, with the image of King Tut, with the black and white striped crown.
Right.
It was Che's face with the crown of King Tut, and he titled it "Walk Like an Egyptian." And my husband Ted saw that on Truthdig, said, "Carol, you've got to reproduce that image. It's great." So I got their permission, put it in our newsletter, which went out to about 9,000 people. And the next day, somebody sent a photograph to Truthdig, who sent it to us, of somebody walking around in the street of Tahrir, in Tahrir Square, with that image.
Wow.
And it said, what did it say? I forget what it said. It said, I don't remember what it said on top, but it was obviously, it came from that. It came from Truthdig to CSPG to the streets of Tahrir Square.
You know,
So,
isn't that amazing? You just never know in this day and age. It's, and by the way, Truthdig does still exist for our viewers. As Wade Kaufman is running Truthdig, it's come back, and we frequently share content with each other. So
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, this is great. So now tell me a little bit more about the center itself, how it came to be, where it exists, the space you occupy.
Well, for the first few years, I would say, before the center existed, it was under the bed in our apartment.
So the first center was under your bed.
It was under the bed, and the only large space that I had was on top of the bed. So if I was going to curate an exhibition, I used the top of the bed to lay things out, because this we didn't have images of them. We didn't, we had the actual posters. We had two 5-drawer flat files, so 10 drawers of flat files in the bedroom. So it would go from the flat files onto the bed, and then if Ted wanted to go to sleep or something, he had to move them off the bed. And then in 1989, many of your listeners may remember Aris Anagnos. Aris Anagnos was created the Peace Center, and he invited progressive groups in LA to use the space for free. And there were about a dozen of us that he invited to move in for a rent-free office. And we had the first Peace Center was actually on 3rd Street. I think there was a predecessor on Franklin in Hollywood, but that only had about a handful of groups. Then he bought a whole building for the groups in LA, and then he bought a larger building in Culver City and moved us over there in 2013. And the point for that larger building and everything, I mean, he paid for utilities, he paid for, cleaning, he paid for everything. It was an incredible, and then there were meeting rooms that the progressive community could use for free. And in LA, finding any space that's affordable, never mind free, is almost impossible.
That's right.
And so we were there. We were in the 3rd Street building from 1989 till 2013. And they moved into a larger building. And the point of the larger building was 50% of the building would be commercial rent-paying tenants. And then the other 50% would be non-rent-paying nonprofits. And the idea was that the rent-paying tenants would cover the overhead the rest of us. And it was a great idea, but the foundation that he set up did not have all of this information in it. And
Uh-huh.
when he died, his son took it over and has basically sold the building, and everybody got kicked out except for us because we agreed to paying rent. So he had not paid rent for over 34 years, 33 years. And now we are, literally struggling to raise an extra $6,000 a month to pay the rent to stay there, because it's very difficult to move 90,000 posters.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So I've never been to the center. Those 90,000 posters, I imagine that the vast majority of them are packed away somewhere, but you do have some that are on display. Is that right?
No, we actually have no exhibition space there. All of our exhibitions are other places. We have an exhibition, and the main, I'll divide your question into two. So for our exhibitions have been in over 400 places around the world, and which is a lot for an exhibition our size, and that doesn't count the posters that we've loaned to places for their exhibitions. That's hundreds more. But just CSPG curated exhibitions is over 400 venues around the world. And for the more than 10 years, we've had an ongoing partnership with Mercado La Paloma, the extraordinary food court in South LA. And we have an exhibition there every spring. So our next exhibition will open the end of this month, and it's called Presidential Rogues Gallery, satirical posters of US presidents since the 1950s. So we start with Eisenhower. There's a great poster that's criticizing his, allowing the execution of the Rosenbergs, and it goes up through Trump and Biden. And we do that exhibition every 4 years, but we obviously change it every time. But so that's going to be opening. I think it's a soft opening on May 27th or around that time, and it'll be up through the beginning of July. So those are our exhibitions. They're not at the center. All of the posters are in flat files at the center for researchers to come and use by appointment. So they're not packed away. They're not in stores. They're all at their offices on Sepulveda.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So what kind of care is required? I imagine that some of these, that time has an impact on them. This is I guess you keep them packed away so that they're not in direct exposure to light, sunlight, and so
Well,
forth.
they're all in flat files. They're all kept flat,
Mhm.
except for the ones that are huge, in which they have to be rolled. And a lot of them we get our rolls, so we have to, flatten them out. And they're in flat files. They're kept in acid-free folders. And so what we are doing now is we're doing a major push to catalog them, because
Mhm.
we don't know what our future is going to be. We don't know if we're going to be able to stay independent, or if we're going to have to merge with an existing institution. That's because we can't afford to continue this $6,000 a month indefinitely. So since COVID closed permanently the digitizing studio that we used to use, we have used a lot of the COVID relief money and generosity from our supporters to create an in-house digitizing studio. So in our first 34 years, we had paid to have about 10% of the collection digitized. In the last 2.5 years, we have digitized over 50% of the collection at archival quality level. So in another 2 years, we'll have all of the collection donated. I mean, all the collection that we have digitized, and then we'll be able, it should only take 1 or 2 days a month to continue to digitize the new stuff that comes in. And then we will be able to figure out what we're going to do, because we will have an online access, and that sometime this year we'll be launching a new website that will give access to all the posters that we've digitized.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tell me about the June 2nd event.
The June 2nd event, we're honoring legendary singer Barbara Dane, who was blacklisted for breaking the cultural blockade to Cuba in the 60s. There's a film coming out about her, and so we've going to have a excerpt from the film and honoring Barbara. She will not be there. She's in her mid-90s, but she will be sending a video acceptance. Her son, who's one of the top Cuban musicians, will be playing, so he will be there in person. We're also honoring Robin Kelly, UCLA historian and an activist that you're very, very, very familiar with. And your
Yes,
list.
Robin D.G. Kelly. He's got a great book out right now that I'm reading, and it's about the legendary jazz musician. Oh, his name is escaping me. I'll put it up. I'll put a cover of the book up in here to tell people they have to read it. But go ahead.
And then two artists, Irene Cervantes, who's an LA artist, a feminist, and she's been doing a lot of political and the personalist political work, silkscreen since the I believe the 60s, at least the 70s, and very involved in the Chicana movement. And Art Hazelwood, who's a Bay Area teacher, artist, organizer. And so we're honoring the two artists as well, the two poster
Wonderful.
artists as well.
And so, is this open to the public? Are you
It's open
using
to
it
the
as a fund?
public. It is our fundraiser. It's we haven't had a fundraiser because of COVID. We haven't had one in 5 years. This will actually be our first in-person fund and the first, fundraiser that we've done outside of, writing an annual appeal. So, and it will be June 2nd at the Skirball. It's a brunch. Doors open at 11. There'll also be a silent auction, and our website, politicalgraphics.org. It will take you to all the information, all the honorees and all the price lists. So
Great.
politicalgraphics.org.
Great. Well, and I'm going to put links in so that people that watch this will be able to access this. Well, Carol, I like to try to keep these videos less than a half hour. I so appreciate you spending time with us. And I could actually talk to you for much longer than a half hour, but you know how people generally don't like to listen to a video that's more than 20 minutes. So I so appreciate you spending time with us. And I'd like to catch back up, after you do the fundraiser. I think I definitely would like to come to that. So I'm encouraging people to do it.
Well, great. And 40% of our collection is international. So it's not just the US, although the bulk of the collection is US. We have huge collections, Latin America, thousands of Cuban posters, Nicaragua, Chile, before, during, and after Allende, European posters, South African posters, Palestinian posters. We have an extraordinary international collection as well.
That's amazing. Well, Carol Wells, it was wonderful sitting and chatting with you, and I look forward to catching up with you again sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below, and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.